Hello, and welcome to the Perfectionism and Manning Up live stream. I'm so glad to have you here, whether you are joining live or whether you are joining by watching the replay. Anyways, it's lovely to have you here. So we are streaming this Perfectionism and Manning Up live stream across both Instagram, on YouTube, on Facebook, so you can join wherever you would like. And you might be wondering, okay, so what are these live streams all about that I'm having here? I basically have these live streams now, both in October, November, and December, mainly now on perfectionism and different topics. So basically on perfectionism and shadow work, manning up, reinvention, dance, braving the wilderness, breath work, worthiness, creativity, hypnosis, wealth, starseed ascension, friendships, and beyond. So these are the different topics that we'll cover across these months. And today the topic is perfectionism and manning up. And I'm so excited to be running this live stream together with Quentin, and I'm going to have him on very soon here. So firstly, let me introduce myself and Bloom Beyond, right? Bloom Beyond is all about really helping high performers overcoming perfectionism in life and business. And basically, what I'm really attempting to do here is to engage a conversation on perfectionism and how it is actually a huge block in all areas of life. And that when you break free from and through perfectionism, a whole new world appears, truly. And it's so great to have you here. Hi, Maria. How are you? So great to have you. So the intention for this live again is supporting men actually in manning up beyond perfectionism then. And what we will talk about is what it means to man up. What it means for men to step into their empowered masculine, really, what that means. Like, there's so many people talking about this, but what does it actually mean beyond perfectionism? And how do you know that you've actually manned up? When do you know that? And furthermore, also, what is it that make people stuck? What does that make men stuck in perfectionism, in the kind of evolution of manning up? Yes, hi Maria, beautiful white soul, you as well. It's so great to have you here. So yeah, furthermore, what we're covering is also how men can relate to their emotions in a healthy way. And also, what does it mean to man up in relationships and mission work? And also, when is a man really eligible for a relationship, Because a lot of men just get into relationships, but it's also necessary to do the inner work to actually, show up there. But also find a balance so that you don't just wait until you're like perfect and then you jump into a relationship, because then you'll never, ever evolve through the personal growth of relationships and also through mission work and serving your mission in this world, right? And lastly, we'll also cover, toxic and healthy masculinity and loneliness. So are you ready for Quentin to come on? I'm so excited to have him on. So let's see if we can find him here to let him in. Yes. There we go. Hi, Quentin. I'm still waiting for your Instagram. There you are.
We're here.
Yes, we're here. Yes, it's so great to have you. Thank you so much for taking the time and the energy to talk about perfectionism and manning up. And I really chose you for so many reasons, right? But firstly, I wanted to talk with you specifically because I saw straight away on your profile that it said that you're shaking up what it means to be a man or manning up. And also you have this history of breaking through perfectionism yourself, and you're talking about these topics. that a lot of men don't talk about, like emotions and all of these things, which kind of gets kind of like thrown under the rug, so to speak. And also, I can see that you mentioned that you're a former D1 athlete. And you also mentioned to me, right, that you've been breaking through perfectionism in your career development and kind of letting go of certain things to step into something totally new of being like a men's group facilitator. So, yeah, it's so great to have you here. I was wondering, first and foremost, how did perfectionism stop you from manning up?
Well, thank you, first of all, for the kind introduction. And I'm really excited about this conversation because it's been a huge part of my journey. And like you asked, my journey with perfectionism, it held me back from starting a business that I wanted to start for 6 years. But I was so unsure of how it was going to look. I knew that it would ruffle some feathers. I knew that a lot of people wouldn't understand it or get it. And, my family, my friends, a lot of them still don't quite necessarily get it. And they probably never will, right? And I think that need for people to get it was part of my perfectionist kind of mentality, because I spent my whole life, you mentioned I was a D1 athlete, but long before that, I was 7 years old when I realized that I could throw a baseball pretty fast and that I was bigger than the other kids in the football field. And that gave me a sense of affirmation. And I started seeing myself as, oh, wow, this is a way that I can build myself up. This is where if I can do things the right way, then I'll be liked, I'll be appreciated, I'll be loved. And when I think back to like who I was before, I was an athlete and, became a mindset coach long-term, right? When I was 7 years old, I was like kind of like a very unique kid, like I was artistic. I wasn't like your gung-ho athlete. I don't think many athletes are born that way. I think we kind of just evolve into sports and we evolve into what does become a very perfectionistic kind of culture, right? Where there's a certain way to do things. There's not a lot of freedom for creativity. And so I lived in this very masculine, oriented world, which is beautiful. And it helped me adopt a lot of my masculine traits. However, I actually found that later in my life, what I actually wanted more of after sports was over was a lot more of that feminine, a lot more of that creativity, a lot of the imperfection. But it was really hard for me to flex that muscle because I hadn't flexed it. I hadn't been imperfect in years. And so, the last, I waited 6 years to start my business when I knew I wanted to start a business from year one. But, perfectionism can definitely get in the way.
It can get in the way. And it sounds like it got into the way several times over through probably your internal dialogue of like knowing deep down that you wanted to start a business. And it's not just about the fact of like starting a business. It's not so much about that. It's about that whole like knowing that you are contributing beyond yourself from an authentic place where you're not ruled by all of these like shoulds and have tos and this and that, but you're just doing it, right?
Yeah.
So
that's the core of it. Like I'm gonna catch up, but that's the core of it. Like it's really coming back to who you are, and that's what it was for me. It's like a lot of people look at like how I've grown and how I've evolved over the last like 5 years since I moved to San Diego, and I think there's a lot of traits that I've sort of adopted that haven't been healthy, but most of it's been coming back to myself, like coming back to who I really am, right?
Yeah,
and it's kind of returning home in a way. And in a sense, it's like, if you don't love me for who I am today, like, I don't want you to love me. You know what I mean? It's like this is me. This is authentic, And I think that's what keeps us back a lot, holds us back, is the fear of being fully seen and being exposed as who we truly are, right? And so that's we perfectionism, I'm sure you could talk for days on this, right? Like how it interweaves with our authenticity.
Yes, it intervenes with your authenticity for sure. And I'm also curious to know, since it said in your bio that you are reinventing or shaking up what it means to man up, what is it that really lights you up about talking about this and about helping men man up in probably a new way than commonly known? What does it mean to man up?
Well, it's one of the best questions. I love asking that question to men because I get a different answer from every man out there.
Yes.
And, I think we could talk about culture and how a lot of men today were raised around a toxic sort of culture around masculinity. Not all of it's toxic, though. Like I said, so many of the lessons that I learned through sports and through, my upbringing, like I am so glad I have the discipline that I have now to wake up early at 5 or 5:30 and work out. Like, oh my God, like to organize my schedule and create that masculine container for it. Like it's so valuable. But like at the same rate, we've been told to stuff it down. We've been told to man up when we're hurting, when the team needs us, and it's often, especially in athletes' perspectives, you see this happening a lot right now, is athletes are asked to put their health on the line. In the NFL and even in college, like you take Toradol shots to basically numb out the pain of any injury you have that game to go and play the game. And this is all done like, behind the scenes at every college and every sports organization does this, right? Like they just don't talk about it. And so there's this sacrificial nature of sport that I think has us leave our bodies, like literally has us leave our bodies as men and go into our heads and say, I'm going to numb this out. I'll maybe even use drugs to do it. And what does that teach us long-term as men? What does that teach us about how to handle pain, uncomfortability, discomfort? We compartmentalize it, we numb it, and look at the stats today. The culture of manning up has turned men into, men are more likely to feel. We actually feel more than women on average, but we are far less likely to express our emotions. Right?
Yes.
And we experience, I think the suicide rate is like men account for 4 out of it. It's like 2/3 of every suicide is a man. 4 out of 5 men, the suicide rate goes up even more in college for college younger boys. And it gets worse and worse the further down you go. And so it's really interesting right now. Men experience more emotion, but they don't reach out for help and they don't know how to really process these things because they're told that it's not manly. Right. And so when I say shaking up what it means to be a man, I'm literally shuffling the deck. I'm reshuffling it. And I'm giving every man out there the opportunity to look at their cards and decide which ones they want to play, essentially. Because every man does have a different definition of what it means to be a man. And I honor that. Everyone has a certain balance. We can talk about masculine and feminine polarity and duality. And like everyone's got a different balance. I have a different balance than the average man, like we all do. And so it's about finding what's true for you. Nothing's necessarily toxic masculinity until it harms you at the core. So I like to bring men back to like, how is this supporting you or how is it helping you in your mission? So that's really what manning up means to me. And so that's really the ethos of what it means to shake it up.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing all of that. And you mentioned the statistics around these things too, around suicide, et cetera, and the mental health challenges that a lot of men actually meet due to not expressing their emotions. First and foremost, maybe like numbing their emotions and then not expressing it, obviously, too, because if you numb through even perfectionism, because that is a numbing strategy. You can numb through procrastination and you can numb through hustling your ass off without a sense of intentionality behind it, right? And it's funny how, mindlessly and without a connection, right, to your core, to your values. Right. You're just doing it because you feel like you should, right? Yeah. And it's interesting how the statistics that you're mentioning around men's health also intertwine with the perfectionism statistics, with socially prescribed perfectionism being 3 times more now than in 1980. right? So it's like it's increasing and increasing and increasing, picking up more and more.
Interesting.
Yeah, so these things intertwine. And I think that perfectionism is a big, big, big block for a lot of men as well.
Yeah.
For sure. So how do you think that perfectionism intertwine here in those that you are coaching?
Well, it shows up in a lot of ways. You know, I think a lot of men, if I ask them if they have perfectionism, they might not identify with it necessarily, but then we start asking them questions and they're like, just the same way if I asked a man if he was angry, he'd probably be like, no, I'm not mad.
Yeah.
I'm good, you know, it's fine.
I'm good.
Right. And then you start digging, you start like pushing a little bit and they're like, actually, I am pretty frustrated about this. Yeah, that did piss me off, but I'm afraid to express my anger. And so, you know, they never express it. And so I think it's interesting about perfectionism. I think we all have it. And yeah, I mean, I think it gets in the way of man and embodying your masculinity. You know, especially right now when it comes to, you know, gender dynamics, the women's movement, you know, all of these things. Like me being a cisgendered, white, straight male, showing up in the world can feel, you know, and I don't mean to undermine my privilege, right? You know what I mean? Like, but like to be a man and to display any sort of masculine qualities these days, it's very easy to kind of get cut down, you know, and be labeled as like a patriarch, or like you're feeding into the masculine, toxic masculine narrative, which is really interesting because people look at my work and they actually think to themselves, a lot of people think to themselves, this doesn't align with what I'm thinking. We've actually, me and my business partner, we've actually had people tell us, I don't align with the idea of men's empowerment.
Interesting.
I don't align with the idea of men's empowerment. And this isn't meant to be political at all, but like, you know, it's interesting because when I think about it, how I see the world is if we can heal the men that naturally do have control, do have like muscle strength, do have power right now, man, can we shake the world up? Can we influence more men to heal and to shake things up and to be more themselves and to release some of the grip? I think that would be really effective versus trying to take things from men. That's never going to work, you know? So it's you know, saying that and coming out and saying that and being that version of a man and sort of embodying your version of masculinity, it can feel scary, you know, because of the culture that we currently, you know, are living in. And I see it shifting, but you know, we're at a place right now where it can be a little scary to man up.
Yeah. There can be some fear around that due to both men and women having their perception of what's going on with masculinity, right? And I actually talked about this today, or I wrote about it in one of my posts about, you know, women's circles and men's circles. And even though that I am 100% for men and women being in their own circles and men seeing men and supporting men and women seeing women and supporting women, I also think it's super crucial that we come together and create arenas and where both can be intertwined and support one another and reflect one another. Because when we are reflecting each other as well, as we heal and as we grow, then massive shifts can happen. And I think that is something that a lot of men are afraid about. Men oftentimes are afraid of or scared of women, and women vice versa with men, right?
So true.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, there's some intimidation there for sure. And another thing I thought I would mention too is, you know, I hear a lot of men like Jordan Peterson and Andrew Tate, et cetera, talk about, you know, masculinity as well. And for instance, you know, Jordan Peterson talks about responsibility being a big part of manning up, so to speak, right? That manning up takes or means that you take responsibility. And he says that men that don't grow up don't find the meaning in their life that sustains them through difficult times. And this leaves you bitter, resentful, hostile, vengeful, arrogant, deceitful, and without purpose. Right? Without purpose, possibly caught in either procrastination or a meaningless hustle. I added the last part there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would love your thoughts on responsibility and masculinity.
It's massive, you know. It's I wouldn't want to say it's a masculine trait, but I think it's especially important for men to understand their responsibility in the world, because we have, I don't know what the stats are, but I think it's like 90 or 95% of our Fortune 500 CEOs are men, right? Like, also, 95% of our Fortune 500 CEOs are former athletes. And I think about the privilege and the opportunity that we have as men and as former athletes to make an impact. Sorry, I'm losing my train of thought here. Bring me back to the question. What was the question?
Responsibility.
And so responsibility. There's the responsibility that we have. And this is actually part of my journey. I did not realize that I was playing victim in areas of my life until 4 years ago. There were areas where I was playing the victim. I was waiting for Superman to come in. I had this kind of like weird fantasy that someone was going to see me, they were going to meet me, and they were going to be like, "Hey, Q, here's $1 million. Go start this company that you've been thinking about in your head. Go put money towards that business plan that's in your closet. Like, put this money. Like, we believe in you. Go do it." Right? It's fascinating. I wasn't the one that was going to ask for it. I wasn't going to put my ass on the line, but I was waiting for someone to come and sort of like be like, "Oh, mentor me." Right?
That's how we're programmed, right? Isn't it? To some degree, it is.
Well, it also happened in sports where like kind of everything was already planned for you, you know, as an athlete. And I kind of got used to that. Everything was planned for me. All your classes were set up in a certain way. Your meals were taken care of. You had to figure it out, but like most of it was like handled for you. And so all that masculine, all the playbooks were designed for you. So I find that, men coming out of sports have to really figure out what our playbook is and realize that we do take responsibility for it. And for me, going into the entrepreneurial space, the work from home space in my first startup out of college, it was one of the hardest environments for me to work in because I was working at home. I had no oversight. I had nobody watching me and saying, "Hey, make sure you do this, this, and this. This is what's going to lead to sales." I was creating the sales process on my own. I was the sales guy on the startup team. I was figuring out how to talk about this stuff. And I was lost.
That's interesting.
I was totally lost, and I had no one to really go to. And it was so interesting. So
that's the key there.
I had this desire to like find, have someone come and sort of support me. But I wasn't the guy that was, I wasn't thinking to myself in those moments, "Oh, sales is an opportunity for me. What if I hired someone to teach me how to do sales? What if I went and read 1 million books on sales over and over and over, watched YouTube videos on sales and actually applied those lessons?" I never thought to do that. I thought that someone else was supposed to do that for me, that I was just by showing up, I was doing the work. So interesting. That can happen. That can happen even in present day. I think we sometimes go into like, even if you're someone listening who's like really into spiritual development and personal growth. It can feel good just to go to an event and be like, "I showed up, transformed me," right? Like go to do a mushroom ceremony or something, or go do ayahuasca and do it. Save me, fix me. Right? It's not how it works.
I'm doing the work.
It's not how it works. No, that's a tool.
That's perfectionism.
Things. Let's talk about that. Tell me more about that. How's that?
How is that perfectionism? It is perfectionism because you're then kind of outsourcing your power, so to speak, to some book or some course or some mentor or some retreat or some this or some that or some person. Right? You're outsourcing that power that you yourself have within you. Right? So it's about you taking that and initiating that through action, through intentional action, not mindless, but intentional action. But also, I think being comfortable, or at least kind of allow yourself to be in that discomfort of being messy in the beginning. Like you gotta just allow yourself to just surrender to this messiness of creating something.
Yeah.
Like
so true.
It's not like in growing up in you know, school and work when you have someone tell you what to do.
Right.
It's not.
Right.
It's very messy. It is, and that is where the perfectionism can become the blockage, because you're having an expectation, an assumption in your mind of like, this should be really clean and neat, like I see it is on social media, or other people are doing it, or the way that I imagine it to be. So it's about catching those words and images that runs in your mind and being like, oh, that's interesting. Hi there, perfectionism. And just charging forward. And I'm just gonna also read some comments here.
Oh, yeah,
amazing. This is so important. Glad you two are talking about this topic. Yes, Maria, amazing. Yes. Hi, wonderful. And I saw another one as well. We are one chromosome apart. Not that much difference.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I agree. Blended learning is powerful. Yeah, blended learning, like having men and women come together also to mirror one another, like you and I are doing right now. Right. Like we're talking here. I'm a woman, you're a man, and we're learning about each other and about our perceptions of the world, perceptions about masculinity. And that's how we learn, right?
Well, I love too that we're talking about perfectionism and you're bringing up this topic of responsibility, because, you know, I have to separate manning up from masculine energy, because you and I both have masculine energy, remember, right? So,
yes,
you know, like that's where, like, I think when you ask me about responsibility, and I say my first hunch is like, I feel like that's kind of like a masculine quality. It's not a man's quality.
Yeah.
It's a masculine quality that we all hold. And what you just spoke into is like being willing to be brave and being courageous and having that sense of direction and taking responsibility and saying, I steer this ship. This is my life, right?
Yes.
And I'm going to pick up tools and supporters throughout my hero's journey, but it's my journey. No one else can take my journey from me. And nobody's going to come and be the hero of my journey, of my story, right?
Yep. And that's living at cause, right? Living at cause. Yeah, it's living at cause instead of living in effect to circumstances and events and people.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and that's what it is to me. Like, I think that's what some men do really well, is embrace that masculine quality. But I fell victim to it. I still fall victim to it. We're not all perfect, and we can all, call ourselves more into responsibility and realize the opportunity we have as men. To man up and
because you have something to offer, right? You have something to offer.
Yeah.
Whomever is watching this right now, whether you are a woman or a man, whatever, I don't care. You have something to offer.
Right.
And that masculinity or masculine energy or whatever is something that you can have and create for yourself and for this world, like have as some sort of like to sculpt whatever is flowing through you, because the flowing is the feminine energy, right? That is the creativity. That is what comes through you. Yeah. So it's about, are you able to hold that for yourself, hold that energy for yourself? And also as women, are you able to surrender to a man and basically allow a man to support you in that, right? And not only think that you're going to have to do this solely on your own and be so freaking independent, because trust me, that will leave you really unfulfilled and empty. Because I've gone that route myself, and it's not fun.
Well, I've been dancing with that too lately. I think a lot of the men that I work with, we have this kind of analogy. Like I ask them to kind of like squeeze their fist and realize how much they're trying to control things, and then I ask them to release and relax the fist and feel what it feels like. To let go. What a lot of people don't realize is that for a lot of men, this goes for a lot of women too, but like, it's actually much more comfortable just to stay here. And I'm not saying I'm going to punch something. I just mean I'm going to holding control.
Yeah.
I would rather stay in control, stay powerful, and feel like I have control over what's going on. This leads to me, pushing people away. This leads to me isolating because I can control my environment. This leads to all the toxic traits of masculinity. This leads to domination, needing to be the one that's always right, seeing everything as binary, like right versus wrong, seeing things as extremes, right? And so I ask a lot of men to then relax and tell me what would it be like for those parts of your life to actually have more trust, the opposite, right? More flow. And what they realize is that it's not a surrender, actually. It's not giving up control. There's actually an action that it takes. Like for men, they've been squeezing and gripping for so long that it's not an inaction that they're doing. They're not surrendering and waving the white flag. It's actually like, for me at least, it feels more like it's an action. It takes work to let go.
Yeah.
It takes work to let go of this grip because it's scary. It really is scary.
Yeah, there's an attachment there.
Yeah,
there's
and when we acknowledge that scariness, we can look it in the face and say, man, like the embodiment of this is, I've been playing with this a lot lately because control and grip has really come into my world lately with a lot of life transitions. And so I've noticed myself kind of gripping and getting tight in the chest and wanting to control things and actually isolating myself in a lot of ways. And I've really been coming around to this. Like I've been meditating on the feeling of actually relaxing back.
Yeah.
And I'm picturing like God or like, other guys or other people, supporting me when I fall back. And there's something about that where I'm surrendering into like my team. I'm surrendering into like my supporters, because along every hero's journey, you don't do it alone. We're pack animals, we are the driving force, but we have support. We have helpers that come along on our journey. And so that's also manning up. That action of releasing control.
Wow.
That's manhood. That's real manhood.
Yeah, it is.
That comes into, asking for support and asking for help. And I'm in a phase of that right now in my life where I'm moving in a couple of weeks. I got to ask for help. So much of me just wants to do it on my own. I'd rather do it on my own, like not have to coordinate, not have to, have someone screw something up, like I'd rather just isolate. So I'm finding those toxic masculine traits in my body, so it's a practice.
Yeah. And you can notice it. You can notice it somatically, right?
Yeah,
you can notice the tension, the masculine kind of force. You can feel it as stuckness in your body, and you can find it as overthinking in your mind, right? If you're not able to allow yourself to surrender, like you say, or trust or let yourself be supported by those in your life. And that oftentimes takes what? It takes courage. It takes bravery to ask and communicate what you need. And it takes insight, self-insight, to be like, okay, so let myself come into my body. What do I feel? What do I need? And how might I begin to communicate this to those around me? And if there's no one around me right now, because that is very often the case, then it takes courage to step out into the unknown, into some arena, into some group, and face a stranger, like in a cafe. I don't care where it is, right? Where you allow yourself to be vulnerable, and that's a word. That's like, for men at least, it's like, vulnerable. I'm not here to be vulnerable. You know what I mean?
I don't like that word. I try not to use it because it's kind of like mindfulness. It's gotten used so much that like people just like,
yeah.
I think Brene Brown says like bravery, like, or courage, like those sorts of words, like that lights me up, that's taking on my quest. Right.
Yes.
And I really think like this comes down to like what's possible for men when we do embrace both of these parts of ourselves. I have this retreat called Man Unlocked in a month in Joshua Tree. And the whole theme around Man Unlocked is the ability to tap into both of those parts of ourselves and unlock the inner parts of ourselves that we've been holding on to and squeezing, right? That we haven't allowed ourselves to access. And there's this whole sphere in our psyche that we don't even realize is there sometimes, that we've been pushing down or pushing away since we were 7 years old, for instance. You know, I pushed away my creativity since I was 7, you know? So to reintroduce that into my life, oh man, like what unlocks for me? How can I bring that creativity to the boardroom? How can I bring that to my business? How can I channel it in a way where I'm not chaotic with it, but I'm direction oriented with it, and I create space for it? Like, what would that unlock in my life, in my business, in my relationships? More space for that flow, you know?
Yeah.
So that's like what I see. That's what I see possible for men, is more freedom, which is what every man really wants at the core.
It is. And this whole metaphor of the fist, it reminds me of this metaphor that I have about inhaling and exhaling. Like, you can try as long as you can to just inhale. Just try right now.
Yeah.
Like, you can't do it. You have to exhale at some point, right? And exhale. Yes. And it's that sort of balance there, or being able to catch yourself when you're overextending your inhale or overextending your exhale.
Right.
And that is just a metaphor for giving and receiving, so to speak, for both men and women, right?
That is
and
great. That's also like, most of us are over breathers. We breathe too much. We breathe too often.
Yeah, that too.
We breathe in too much, you know? And it's so interesting, like scientifically, how we're kind of caught in this sympathetic nervous system. That's always like, breathe in more, you know?
Exactly. And that's very fascinating with perfectionism too. It's a symptom that I'm looking for. You know, if someone is like overextending themselves, they're typically having their breath from the chest up instead of from the belly up.
Yep.
So it's very somatic. That's what we're talking about here. Now, to go back to also emotions and masculinity, like, what's your take on how men can best relate to their emotions, you think?
Well, I use a formula when it comes to emotions that was coined by Owen Marcus, one of my favorite mentors. He actually greeted me at my first retreat, an Everyman retreat. And Everyman's an awesome organization. If you guys don't know of them, check them out. It's where I kind of got my start when it comes to men's groups and working with emotions. And Owen first taught me this concept of the ROC formula, which means it's ROC, relax, open up, and connect. And, you know, the first step for most men is to actually slow down. Because when we're going fast, we're operating from our head, not our heart. We are glazing over feelings. We are pushing through feelings when we're speeding up. So when I slow down, I have to open up to what I'm experiencing. So you can slow down your breath. You can slow things down, slow down your speech. Just get present and slow down. Take a few moments. And so then you can tap into what you're currently experiencing, tap in your body, bring your awareness from up here. The doing down to this, and the being.
Down to the heart.
Feel what's going on down there. And what's interesting is we talk about psychosomatics and how our mind is connected to our body and how it can show up in our body. Our emotions are down here. They're not in our face. They're not in our head, you know, like anger, resentment lives in certain areas of our body. There's an amazing diagram of the human body and the different emotions and where heat and coolness shows up on the body based on the emotion that the person's experiencing. So anger shows up as heat in the hands, the chest, and in the face.
Exactly.
I think sadness shows up as coolness. I think it's actually like towards the core, I want to say. There's all different emotions, and they're all correlated with body temperature in different areas. And so, like, this isn't woo-woo stuff, guys. This is literally showing up in your body.
This is literally science.
Happening. That gut feeling you've had since you were a kid, it's real. Like, listen to it. And so in order to access your emotional presence, you have to slow down. You have to open yourself up to it. Get present to it, right? And then the third step is C, which is connect. And I think this kind of has two meanings. It's really connect with yourself, you know, like are the emotion, Let it be what it is and put a name to it. The 5 core emotions for the guys listening: joy, anger, sadness, fear, and shame. And I know that only one of those is positive. All right. So feel free to expand joy into all the other amazing things that are there. But just for simplicity's sake, usually if you're experiencing anger, there's something underneath that anger. Anger can be a tool. It can be necessary to be assertive and to be passionate about things. I think a lot of times anger gets a bad rap when it's actually a really powerful tool, especially for guys. And in my past relationship, there's the experience of like, oh, anger is wrong. I shouldn't be angry. If I'm angry, I'm going to get in trouble or I'll be too much, right? And a lot of men feel that too. And so
that's big. Yeah.
Yeah. So
anger.
So tap into that anger, allow yourself to feel it, open up to it, and then connect with it, give it a name. And then you might find as you continue to slow down, you'll actually experience that there's probably something underneath that anger, right? There's probably actually maybe a little bit of sadness, maybe some disappointment of something that's going on or something that didn't go your way. Maybe there's some shame about that not going your way, some guilt in your part in that. Maybe there's
the scale of consciousness,
fear of what that means, fear of what's to come, the uncertainty that leads to anxiety. Anxiety can be the source of a lot of anger. Think of how much stress and anxiety leads to people, having these massive outbursts. And so, you got
to move through it. Through the frequencies, because that's what it is. Emotions is just energy, and motion is just growing through that, right? Yeah, and I really appreciate you talking about all of these different ways to connect with your emotions, for sure. There's one that I also would want to mention that I'm basically applying with the sunflowers and bloomers in my community and those that I'm coaching, which is the rain method, I call it. So think of yourself like the soil, right? Your soil, right? You got to nourish your soil, enrich your soil. And the soil needs some rain, right? Your emotions need to be seen and acknowledged for them not to fester and show up as hostility and resentment toward yourself or others around you, other men, other women. I don't care who it is. It will manifest in some way, shape, or form.
Right.
So the RAIN method is like recognize, allow, investigate, nurture. So you're going to just recognize the emotion. That I find really helpful to just stop. That can be really helpful by just stopping and for a moment and being like, okay, so I recognize myself being triggered here. I recognize myself feeling like I am reacting here, and just recognizing it, and then allowing. So that's where the perfectionism comes in, right? When you recognize it, you might want to fix it. You might want to change it. You might want to do something with it.
Judge it.
Judge it. Yeah. And well, that's an observation. You can observe yourself judging, and that's okay. Like if we never judged anything, like how would we be able to judge what to eat, what to drink, right? It's just a matter of your relationship with your judgment.
Right.
So just allowing presence, right? And then once you have allowed it, you can begin investigating. You can go, okay, so that's interesting. Let's now uncover the root cause here for this. And we can do this through conscious work of journaling and meditating, like you're probably familiar with too, right?
Yeah.
But also subconscious work. So subconscious work like hypnosis, hypnotherapy, that's what I'm working with my clients on, basically, because I really enjoy helping people get to the root cause and not just the surface level, and reprogram the subconscious through repetition, emotion, enough conviction to shift.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then lastly, nurture. So when you have recognized, allowed, and investigated, it's like, okay, now I can nurture myself. Nurture whatever is present within me, and nurture myself for where I am at in my journey as a man, as a woman.
Yeah. I feel like that nurture piece is where it's important to not, to avoid the judgment and making ourselves wrong about things, to feel sadness or to feel angry. Like these are all just normal emotions. You're not wrong for feeling them. Right. And I believe like when we allow ourselves to feel these things instead of bottling them up in a tank. We start to kind of open the valve on that tank and just let things flow through. As they move in, they can move out, As we do that, we start to experience the full spectrum of our emotional experience and actually start to experience way more joy at the same time.
That's right. Yeah, I always say that. Like, you can only experience as much light as you have experienced and processed darkness and shadow. So and the frequencies that we might just want to avoid or suppress or repress. So that was super helpful to talk about emotions. I'm sure that this adds so much value.
I love another thing, by the way. That was great.
Yeah. Now you got that to use with yours as well. And furthermore, I thought we could talk a little bit about also, relationships. How might perfectionism, prevent a man from manning up in relationships, you think?
Perfectionism in relationships.
Yeah, because you've got to.
Man, I can share very openly about this. This is actually really present for me.
Yes.
It's uncomfortable for me to talk about, but this could probably be very useful for people that are watching.
Yes, it is.
So, in today's changing gender dynamics, me and my past partner both have had businesses. I've had mine for 3 years. She's had hers for 5 or so. She was absolutely crushing it. Crushing it. My business, still turning the corner. Still like turning the corner and like trying to make it work, right? Kind of in that valley before it really, turns up.
Oh, wow.
And man, what I made that mean about me as a man, what I made that mean, about my masculinity. The ways that I would compare myself, the ways that I would allow myself to be saved by her.
Oh, wow.
Like I realized so many ways I allowed myself to be a victim to my circumstance and compare myself to her and compare myself to other people. And I didn't stay in my lane. I had my blinders off. And I think that played into my level of perfectionism because I had this sort of expectation of what it was supposed to look like, of where I was supposed to be at this point or by this point. And it's not the only thing that like hurt our relationship and led to us breaking up, but like definitely had a layer to it. That was definitely a layer. So it's it's very interesting because I think I know I'm not the only man that deals with that. I've talked to a lot of men about this because we have the rise of the feminine. We have a lot of really powerful, incredible women out there that are leading great businesses and really, really powerful lives. And, that comes with it a lot of responsibility for both men and women to lead responsibly and to we're just in a whole different world. This is all new for all of us for how to relate. Right. And it's tricky. It's tricky. Right. And for me, perfectionism in that held me back from just being myself, Right?
Yeah. And it is in relationships, right, that we get to mirror one another. And we basically uncover expectations that we might have held about how things and relationships and how we ourselves are supposed to look like and behave and be in relation to others, and especially with the opposite gender as well, right? Because we might have expectations and assumptions of how we are meant to be the one, or how, you as a man are meant to be the leader of the relationship, leader of the businesses, leader of this and that. And because leadership is an emphasized masculine essence that a lot of people talk about. And if you have this goddess or priestess or, whatever you want to call it, this leader woman, it's so feeling ahead of you, then there is conversations to be had. There are a lot of self inquiry that needs to be had as well. I think
exactly. Yeah, and it's a challenge. You know, I found myself kind of like shrinking. You know, and like you know, numbing my voice or numbing my thoughts sometimes, right? Like to because there was like almost a pedestal that I created for that person, right?
Yep.
And we do that in our life all the time, and that's the standard that we somehow hold ourselves to, and we think we're not there, right? And you know, I think, yeah, it shows up in every relationship, you know, like where we
because it's dynamic.
Yeah, and we question our worth. We one up ourselves. A lot of men can probably relate to this. You know, you walk into a bar, you walk into like a yoga class or something, and this happened for me a lot when I first started doing yoga. I'd walk in and I'd look around like, oh, there's all these beautiful. I live in Chicago. I thought I was the smartest guy for going to a yoga class, right? And like I'd be able to meet all these amazing people, and I loved yoga, so it was like a win. And you know, there's this. You walk in the yoga studio, and you're like, how many other guys are here? There's usually like 2 other guys, you know, maybe in the whole. And you know, every guy can relate to this. Like you start sizing yourself up. You start like kind of like one-upping yourself or one-downing yourself and being like, oh, like, does he really practice yoga? Did he show up with a real mat, or does he have one of those old crappy ones, or did he rent one? You know, like start making all these judgments about one another and how we think we're supposed to be, and we project that out on the other people. And I think that comes from a toxic trait of needing to be right, or, you know, being above or below another man. And that's one of the toughest things for guys to really work through,
wrestle
with, right? Is like needing to be, you know, maybe that's what comes in, right? Is like we need to have like the upper hand, or we need to feel like we're in control. But what would it be like to be in harmony instead of being in control? You know, drawing the vision, but not needing to control the destiny. You know, I think a lot of us as men are learning how to balance those two things and dance with it. It's really meant to be a dance. So for the guys that are listening, if you find yourself kind of like one upping, one downing, just notice yourself next time and just try to have compassion for yourself, because that's you're just projecting out to other people, you know. And I like to kind of nip that in the bud and just, you know, just show up, you know. Just show up.
Yes. And you're touching upon, you know, masculinity here and toxic masculinity, healthy masculinity, like what is this? And also in relation to women. And, you know, when we're talking about perfectionism, relationships, manning up, that becomes very apparent, doesn't it? It becomes very apparent what is toxic, what is healthy, so to speak, as well. And how would you define, you know, something as toxic? Because here's what I saw that you talked about on a reel. You talked about, okay, so how do you define toxic? You said toxic to you, toxic to others, toxic to society as a whole, toxic just to men, toxic to women, toxic.
You're toxic saying it in my voice too. It's funny.
Oh yeah. That's so funny. And you said it's important to distinguish the definition of what toxic masculinity is and who is toxic to. Yeah. One kind of toxicity that's often overlooked is the toxicity that's toxic masculinity to other men, you said. Right. And bringing up how we basically compare ourselves or look up to images of what masculinity is supposed to be like. And do you think, this is a question that I have, is it helpful to have an image, to have something to model after, or can it be to the detriment of your own authenticity as a man and what masculinity looks like to you? Because here's what I see a lot of different men trying to sculpt themselves into some sort of avatar of what masculine is, when in fact you and everyone have such great qualities to bring to the table in your own unique way, right?
Yeah. It's true, and it's a balance, you know. That's the interesting thing. it's just like anything in life. Like you take everything with a grain of salt,
Yeah.
and you bring it along your way. If it's too heavy, you let go of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's where it has to come from within. You have to know where you're going and what you want at the end of the day. Like what kind of feelings you want, what your values are as a man, because everyone has different values. If you can really distill those and know what your values are as a man, then how you mix in and shape into what masculinity is will be authentic to you. And you're right. We right now, you mentioned the word Tate, you mentioned the word Jordan Peterson. We could mention other examples of the opposite or other flavors of masculinity. And I think what's beautiful about these personalities is that it actually is bringing about and spurring about a conversation.
That's
and a
it.
Dialogue. in the same way you could say Trump brought up a lot of conversations that maybe needed to be had, but we didn't want to have them, and we didn't want to definitely want to hear it from him, for many people. But, I look at Andrew Tate and I'm like, sometimes I don't want to hear what he has to say, but sometimes I think a lot of men need to hear it, some of the things.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
And so you take that with a grain of salt. You come back to your core. You say, what are my values? Is this supporting me in getting there? Is this masculine energy going to support me in getting where I want to go and being the man I want to be? So I think it can be nice to have models such as those, but never put somebody on a pedestal. This comes back to what we talked about a minute ago. Never put somebody on a pedestal. Know your values, know your worth.
Increases resistance.
Yeah. And take responsibility for you.
Yep. For you. Yeah. Whenever you put someone on a pedestal, as I said, it increases resistance in your own growth journey.
Yeah.
Because then you're looking up as if it's far away. And that's when you begin thinking, oh, is that like some sort of higher self for me? Am I supposed to be just like that? But for sure, I 100% agree with you on this. It's so necessary that the extreme polarity of masculinity can come up as some sort of leader and speak about a lot of things that a lot of others don't speak about, because they have that extreme sense of masculinity that is necessary to charge forward and compel others to act or to think differently to just question things, right?
Yeah.
So
I think Jordan, like something that Jordan talks about is, I like just basically how he says he's speaking to disaffected men. I actually don't know what the definition of disaffected means, but I think I get the point, right? Like men that feel misguided, men that feel like their masculinity is being shamed and feeling like they can't be who they really feel like they are. Right. And I think that the reason I want to bring that up is because it brings me back to something we talked about earlier, trying to get my head around it. In that, what I meant by that post, that reel, is what is toxic masculinity started off like years ago. That term got thrown out there. It was defined as something that's toxic to me. Like think about it. Like if I'm going to be the one that's out there chasing girls or chasing money, chasing violence, needing to be dominant, that's about me. It's about like, is that healthy for me as a man to be thinking that way, to be valuing those things? That's a toxic thing for me. That's how toxic masculinity started. And it's interesting, like flash forward 10, 20 years, now we have all these other layers of how my toxicity to myself, which leads to a very unfulfilling path and road and emptiness and dullness, right? We all know that path. We've all seen it. Now it's turned into, how does this impact the world? Which I think is a great conversation. It's necessary to realize that how, me being unkind to myself and valuing these silly things is not helping the world. But we're kind of missing the point, because that actually shames the man for doing those things. It shames the man.
That's so true.
That also creates like resistance, like you mentioned, right? It's like, screw you guys.
Perfectionism.
This is me. Like, screw you guys. Right? You're not going to shame me. I'm going to stand up. I'm going to pound my chest. You can't tell me what to do. So if you come at a man with shame and you say shame on you, Immediately they get defensive because they think they're doing something wrong. But instead, if someone were to shine the light to Andrew Tate and say, Andrew, this is how you're hurting yourself. This is how you're squeezing a hot coal in some areas, right? When you talk about this and you say that money is the answer, right? Like a lot of people get that message from Andrew's messages. Mm-hmm. If he were to see what he's doing in certain areas, he would see how he's hurting himself.
Yeah.
And it always comes back to that, right? So let's bring it back to what toxic masculinity was meant to be in the first place. It's not about how it's toxic necessarily to society. Yes, that's important. But like, come on. Like, let's talk about the men
It's
here.
very surface level.
Yeah. That's true. It is surface level. It's not getting to the core, which is if you address toxic masculinity to the core and address men's values and have them come back to themselves and not put other people, even like Andrew or like Jordan, on a pedestal, just come back to you, you know? Then you can say, is this helping me or not? Is this serving me or not? Focusing on money, focusing on violence, focusing on domination, focusing on competition, one-upping and one-downing.
Well, that is the old system falling.
What's that?
Yeah, that's the system falling. You know, the emphasis that this sense of disempowered or fragmented masculinity has had on the world, right?
Right.
So it's more so, I think that what's happening though is he's bringing all of this up to the surface like any other would, and we get to address it and see what we want to do with it.
Right.
And every man gets to decide for himself. And what I see too, and what I think is beneficial anyways, and I think that any person get to do is grow through their own journey and try things out. Try it out for yourself. Sometimes that's what you got to do. Sometimes you got to climb the freaking ladder, climb all the way to the freaking top, only to realize it's empty. It's numb. You feel numb. You feel nothing.
And that's perfectionism. You have to be willing to get there and have it suck. You have to be willing to try this, open this door and realize it's empty. You know? You have to be willing to do that.
Or you might go in there, right? You might go into the room or climb all the way up to this heaven, whatever you want to call it. And then you're like, oh, this is so good. I've got it all. And then you consume it all. And then you're like, now I want to climb back down again because I feel like I've had enough of this. Now I want to try something new. So let's climb back down. Let's try to find and create another path in the forest instead of climbing a ladder. You know what I mean? Like,
so true.
Like let's climb a tree instead. It doesn't have to be so linear, you know? Yeah, you can try it out, but oftentimes that's it. You got to try it out linearly first because that's typically how we learn. And grow and figure out what works, what doesn't. And then as you do, you can try something nonlinear the next time. That is what business is. It's very nonlinear.
So true. So true. I would say business has taught me my biggest lessons in masculinity and femininity, because if I want to be creative, if I want to move my business forward and think smartly, I have to have the masculine presence to create that time in my calendar to go and do that.
Yeah.
You know, can't always be do and work in the business. I have to separate myself from it sometimes and find, I have creative time blocked off for later this afternoon. I have creative time all day tomorrow. That's it. Right. And I know that's a breath of fresh air for a lot of people to think about, but that's work too. You know,
it is.
That's necessary for me to have a holistic business. I want to let you know I have to jump in a couple of minutes. This has been so much fun. I have to talk to you forever.
I know. Yes.
I'm really glad we're having this conversation because there's so many.
Me too.
Mergers of these two topics.
Yes, we're going to round off very soon here. And just to answer you on what you were talking about creativity, it's like, yes, you tap into your creative power. That's what you do. And it takes work to prioritize your creativity. And that is actually part of the Rise season in my Bloom Down Perfectionism program. So it's a module on playful power, on joyful heliotropism, on intuitive knowing. And that is when you're rising, right? Mm-hmm. When you're rising, you have a foundation from which you can prioritize these things. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it's amazing. Oh my word. This has been such an incredible conversation. We have so much to talk about everything, perfectionism, masculinity, all of it. So thank you so much for jumping on. Where can people find you and work with you as well? Yeah, so if you're joining us on Instagram, you can find my profile right here. I'm doing free coaching tomorrow. So if you want to jump on and get some, a free hour of coaching with me on IG Live, come check me out in a couple hours. Actually, it's today. Sorry. Yeah. And then, so check me out there. Awesome. We have an awesome retreat coming up called Man Unlocked. It's November 4th to 6th. So if there's a man in your life that you want to hear this message and invite them into that experience, we have a few more spots left. Yes. And check out my website as well, q-williams.com. And this has been such an awesome conversation. So thank you. Yes, thank you so much. And for anyone who's keen to learn about Bloom Beyond and what we're doing also for both men and women in reflection to each other, within the Bloom Beyond tribe, for instance, both men and women can come in there, right? And work through the perfectionism, overcome perfectionism together and see how perfectionism manifests both for men and women. Like it's really interesting, this. Yeah. So you can go to the link in bio to apply to get part of like a free cohort in that group to receive coaching as well from me, more of like the feminine approach, more of the feminine nurturing coaching as well. But also I do have that clarity in me and being like, I can ask tough questions. We're a chromosome apart. We're a chromosome apart. Yeah. And then also another option is for you to also basically go straight to a one-on-one session with me by following the link in bio. This is a limited offer, so you can check that out. When you're in the tribe, you also have the option to do a 1-year commitment with me, basically, where you can do Bloom Beyond Perfectionism program and Bloom Beyond Mastermind with retreats as well. So these are long-term commitments and transformation work, truly, to create a life and business of freedom beyond perfectionism. So thank you so much for joining, everyone. Make sure to comment whatever you feel free to or basically want to talk about or mention on this live stream, what gave you value, and share it with anyone who might want to learn about masculinity and manning up and also perfectionism. Thank you so much. It was lovely to have you and can't wait to have another live stream next week on another topic. So stay tuned, everyone. And good to have this conversation with you. Thank you, Martine. Quentin. This is great. See you soon. See you soon. Bye. Bye.